Welcome to my YouTube channel, Nerdy the Coder. In today's lecture, we're going to be talking about architecture of our application. Since we're going to be building the applications from scratch and we're going to be using some API to get our delay. Before diving into the lecture, please make sure you watch the previous lectures on reactjs in order to follow along. Let's just dive into the lecture. Since we know that we are going to be using the JSON placeholder API over here, which gives us access to different data. We have separate endpoints for posts and we have comments for those posts, and we have albums, and those albums have some pictures, and also every users have some to-dos, and then we have some users. So if I open this link, then you can see that we have this user information over here. We have a different ID, name, and everything over here, address and phone company. And also for each user, we have some to-dos. And if I open this link, you can see that and this is basically user ID, and then the post ID, and then we have the title, and then we have the flag for whether the to-do is completed or not. So based on that, we have a true and false value for that. So this is basically the data that we need, and we're going to be making use of some posts and comments. So for each user, we're going to be getting posts, and then for each post, we're going to be getting some comments. And we can also update the posts and also update some comments and delete, and we can do the CRUD operations on this data. So it's already there, the data is already there, the server is already running. We're going to be using the built-in third-party server. We don't need to create our own backend server for that. So we're going to be just consuming this API via this URL, and we're going to be making use of it. So first of all, let's just create a simple architecture for our application, and we'll see how it actually looks. So you can see that we have this application, and then app.js is basically the root of our application, or basically the root component of our application. Then it will contain the users. So we will have on the main page, we'll have the list of users, and then each user will have some posts. And then when we open the post for a single user, then we'll have some the list of the posts, and then on clicking each post, we'll have some comments, so we can read them, and we can even update them or delete them. So over here, you can see that we have the application, and then we have the app.js, that is basically the root component or application. And then we will have the users component, we'll have post component, and then comments component. So first of all, if you get into the users component, and we will create a separate folder for each of these root components. Basically for users, we'll have a separate folder. For posts, you'll have a separate folder, and comments, and then we'll have all of these files. So users, and then to render a single user a component, we'll have a user.jsx. So if you should just keep in mind that we can name it .js or .jsx, so both of them are the same. But since we're going to be using JSX in our components, then I'm going to be naming it .jsx. And for each of the folder, or for each component, we'll have some styles specific to those components. So, and also we're going to have some list of posts over here, and we're going to be rendering some posts over here. And similar to the users component, we'll have some styles over here, and also we'll have comments, and each comment will be rendered in a separate component, and then we'll import it in the comments. And also we have some styles for the comments. So yeah, that is basically a simple architecture that is just quickly created for our application. And now let's just go to our VS Code and actually create the folders and the files for us. So here, yeah, you can see that we have this source folder, and you can see that we have app.js file, that is basically the root component over here that we already rendered, and you can see it over here. So basically this is what our application from the previous lecture, where we just render some data dynamically from the state. So we'll be doing the same, but we'll be doing the same, but we'll be fetching the data from an API instead of reading it from the state itself, hard coded. So let's just create the folder. I'll name it components, and within the components, I'll create another folder. I'll call it users. And within the users, we will have the users.jsx file, so users.jsx file. And also I'll create another file within the users, and I'll call it user.jsx. Make sure that you don't get confused with this, because I'm gonna create the components over here, then you'll have a better idea of why I created two components over here. So yeah, for now just bear with me for a minute. Now I'll create another another folder within the users component, since the architecture is basically that each user have its own post, and each post have its own comments. So that's why the way I want to design it basically to make it domain driven design. So I'm following a bit of domain driven design. So each domain, for example, a user is a separate domain, and then post is a separate domain, and also comments are a separate domain. So I'm creating folders based on those domains. So that's why. So now users have its own folder. Now I'll create a folder for posts, and similarly the posts will have two components over here, post.jsx, and also I'll create another file over here, and I'll name it post.jsx. And within the post, since the comments are basically parts of the posts, then I'll create another folder over here, and I'll call it comments. And within the comments, I'll create a file, I'll call it comments.jsx, and also I'll create another file, I'll call it comment.jsx. So yeah, this is basically our basic architecture, our basic folder structure for our simple application. And in over here, and in here, I can just simply create the styles file. So I'll just name it styles.module.css, and then I'll create a similar folder file over here in the comments. I'll call it module.css, and similarly within the post, I'll create another file. I'll call it styles.module.css. You can name it whatever you want, but yeah, for now I'll just call it styles, so it's pretty obvious that what it means. So here I'll be writing up some styles for the components actually. So let's just get back to our files here. I'll just go to the source file again, and let's just create our components over here. So basically I'll get started from the user.jsx, and I'm using an extension over here that is basically you can install it from the extensions over here if you're using VS Code. So it's basically called reactjs extension, or it's basically called reactjs snippets. So you can see that when I type rc, you can see that it's basically a React class component, and I just have to type another rcc. So it's basically when I hit enter, so it will just create the component for me, and I can just rename it to capital letters since it's a class. So I can just name it, so it's basically users and not just users. So I'll just rename it, and I'll call it users component, and this is correct. And also I'll create the constructor over here, and it will get the props over here, and also it will be calling this the super in order to call the constructor on this component. And also we'll have the basic state over here, but for now we're not having any users or any data like that. So but yeah, we'll just leave the state as it is for now, and I'll save this component. And now let's just copy this and put it in the user, and I'll just rename it to user, and I'll just use a shorthand to rename it. So user component, and I can put single user component over here as well. Let's just copy this, and I can put it, I can use it for the posts as well. So I'll call it posts, and I'll just name it to short, and also I'll just name it this. So post component, and I can use it for post component over here as well. So it's basically a single post, so I'll just get rid of the s at the end, and I'll rename it to single post component. And in here you can see that we have the comments now, so I'll reuse the same component over here, and I'll name it comments, and I'll just make it small again, and then commons component, that's correct. And also I'll just paste it over here, and I'll just get rid of the s at the end, and I'll just rename it to single comment component, and I'll just save it. So we now have created all of our components over here. The only thing that is remaining now is basically to import it basically in the app.js. But yeah, you can see that we have our own component over here, and we are not importing the users component over here. So in order to do that, so basically, since you're seeing that users is basically the primary component over here, or the main component over here that we need to import in the app.js, and the single user component is going to be part of the users component that we'll see in a few minutes. And yeah, so I'll just get rid of this code over here, and I don't need the state over here as well, so I'll just remove it and I'll just leave it empty. And in order to import that component, I'll just do this, and also I'll just do users. So basically, in order to import a component, you can see that I'm importing a component from users. So you can see components. Within the components, I'm going to the users folder, and basically this is the user folder that I'm having access to now. And within the users, I'm telling it to get me the users.jsx file. So this is basically the file that I'm pointing to, and I can name it whatever I want, but since it's recommended to use the name of the component as it is. So and also we need to make the first letter capital in here, so make sure you do that as well. And in here you can see that this is how we can import a component into the JSX now. So when I save it, I'll just go to the folder, and you can see that we have the user component rendered over here. But since we don't have the single user within the users component, so we do have the users component over here that has been rendered, but since we are not importing any single user over here within the users component, so let's just import it. But before doing that, or just let's just do this, I'll first import the user component like this. I'll just type import, and then I'll type user, and I can say from, and since it's in the same directory, then I can just do dot and / and then you can see that I have access to the user. I also have access to the post, but yeah, I'm just gonna need the user, so I'll just hit enter, and I'll get the user component from here. And you can see that I can just use it like this over here, and I'll close the component. So now I'm getting an error that you can see what says that JSX expression must have one parent element. So basically there are two elements now. So in order to render these elements, we must have a parent element in order to render them. So one way to do is that basically we wrap these elements within a dev element, or whatever element or whatever HTML element that you want to wrap them in. For example, a span element or whatever you're more comfortable with. You can wrap in there. So when I save it, you can see that we have users component, and now we have single user component. And I can just copy the same user component and paste it as many times as I want. And you can see that we'll have multiple users over here now. So within the users component, we are going to be rendering every single user like this. Yeah, but the wrapper that we created over here, the parent element that we used over here, you can see that it's basically a dev element. And when I inspect it basically, and when I go to this wrapper around it, so you can see that this is basically the wrapper, the parent element that we just wrapped the users component and then the child components over here like this. So sometimes you don't really want to, create a wrapper around your elements like that. But in order to get rid of the error that we just saw, that the JSX elements must have a parent element. If you have more than one element that you want to render and it doesn't have a parent element, then it's going to pop that error up. So in order to avoid that, we have two ways to do that basically. So we can simply use with empty tags. So you can see that it's basically a valid JSX element. And when I do something like this and I save it, then you can see that we are now rendering the users component where we no longer see the parent component and we are not getting any error at all now. We also have another way of doing this. So we can just have access to another component that we can get from here, another element, JSX element that we can have access to, that is basically called Fragment, and you can use it like that. So you can also put a fragment over here that's basically the same as the one, but a small difference that I'll just show you. And it's already refreshed, and even I can refresh it again, and you can see that the parent element or the fragment is not rendered over here. So that is basically the advantage of that, using fragment or empty element without putting anything inside that. But the problem over here is with the empty tags is that, for example, you have a case that you want to render some elements dynamically, and you need to provide a key to that we saw in the previous lecture. Then in this case, you cannot pass a key like this because it's going to be the name of the component or the fragment that you are declaring over here. So that's basically the problem over here. But if you have a case like this, that you don't have to, loop through your elements or render elements, in that case, you can just use it, or even you can use the fragment. That's basically the same. But if that's the case and you have a loop or something like that, and you need to provide or pass a key to the element, then in that case, you can simply use the fragment. And I'll just copy the name over here. I'll just paste it over here, and you can pass the key over here. So that basically makes sense then, because it already has the name, and you even if you pass a key to it, it still won't get rendered. So that's basically the thing. And you can also use something like this. If you don't want to import everything from here, then you can simply point it to like this. So React, you just write React, basically that's pointing to this React that we are using, and we can simply use react.fragment, and it will be the same as we imported. So that's basically the same, and you can see that it's been refreshed, and we no longer see the react.fragment or the fragment element that we wrap our child components in. So yeah, basically we now have everything in place over here. I'll get rid of this for now. And now since we have the user over here as well, then we'll go to the post. So since every user have its own list of posts, then what we'll do is we'll just import the posts over here. So I'll just type post. Remember, you have to type it with the capital letters, and then you can just close it like this. But first you have to import it. So in order to do that, I'll just import posts from this folder that's called posts, and from the posts pointing to this posts.jsx file, and you can see that we are getting the same element, the same error over here that says JSX expressions must have one parent element. So there, let's just wrap it in an empty fragment over here. So I'll just remove it and I'll just paste it over here, and you can see that our error is gone now. Now you can see that we have the users component, and in the users component we have a single user component over here, and every single user component we have the posts component. So yeah, let's just add some styles to this, and just to make it obvious and see that how it really looks. So yeah, I'll just add some styles to this. So in order to do this, add the styles, we just have to go to the styles module file, and in here, since we're applying the styles to the user.jsx file, so we can just simply do or create a class like this, and we can apply the styles over here. So we are just going to be using simple CSS over here, and you can say that I'll just apply borders. So border 1 pixel solid red for now. And to apply this style to the user component, what you can do is I'll just have to import the styles like this, and from the styles .module.css, and to apply the style to this specific component, so you see that I have changed the element or the parent element from the empty fragment to this to a div element, because that if you want to apply styles to this element, then you must have to make it a valid HTML element. So in order to apply the styles of the class name, since we created a class over here, then we need to do something like this, and we'll have to point to that specific class that we created. So we can do like this, styles.user. So just keep in mind that the user is basically this specific class that we created with the CSS. And when I save it over here, you can see that the styles are applied to each post. So users component does not contain any styles. And then we have for each user component, we have the red border over here. So just keep in mind that why did I put the styles.module in between the .css and the styles. So that is because that when this is compiled, basically, so these styles will be applied specifically to these components. It won't be conflicted with the other component. For example, you have a similar class name in other components, and you're using the same class name within other components, then it won't be collapsed because this component is different. And if I get to the styles over here, when I inspect it and check the styles for example for this user component, so you can see that it's been a prefix with styles user. That's basically the component name or the class name that has been applied, and it is this random key over here. So that is basically for the specificity. I'll add some more styling to this, so I'll just add some padding to this, and you can see that we have 10 pixels of padding over here, and I'll also add some margin over here. So I'll add some margin top and bottom, so I'll add 10 pixels and then no margin on the left and right. So when I go here, you can see that we have single post over here, and then we have single user over here, and then posts component over here. Also, now that we are importing the posts in the user component, now we have to import the single post into the post component. So for that, I'll just have to do this, and I'll import the post component. I'll just copy the name and I'll import it from here, and I can do something like this. And I'll have access to the user, to the single user that I want to import, basically. And I can do this. So this is basically post and not posts. And I'll do this. So we're getting the same error again. So we definitely have to unwrap it within a div. For now, we'll just unwrap it on a div element. And I'll save it. I'll just indent it a little bit. Okay, sorry, that's basically post. And when I save it, you can see that now we have single user component, then we have the posts, and then we have the single post component over here. But we can also, create as many posts as we want. When I save it, you can see that user component, then posts for each user, and you can see the list of posts over here. So that's basically how it works. So since we applied the styles to the posts, so to the users, and to every single user, then we will apply some styles to the post itself, or maybe also the posts. So I'll just create some styles over here, and I'll create a class. I'll call it posts, and in the posts I'll do something like border 1 pixels, solid green, and I'll apply the styles over here. Like this, and I'll just apply the styles over here by using the class name. When I refresh, you can see that now we have green border around the posts, and now also let's apply styles to every single post over here. So I can do that as well. So for the post, we'll have this border, blue border with some padding and also some margin, so that makes sense. And I won't be putting the style over here, but within the post, and you can see that I can apply the style over here, and I can just copy the style like this. But first I have to import the styles. So styles from this directory, and then styles.module.css. And when I save it, you can see that we have a single post component over here. But yeah, since we are applying the styles to post and not the post, we'll have to change it. And you can see for each post we have the blue border now. So you can see this big list of components over here. Yeah, we'll get rid of a lot of the posts. I'll just leave one post over here, and also I'll leave one user over here just to make it more cleaner as we go deeper. So you can see that we have the users component on top, then we have a single user component that is basically the red border, and then we have the posts component, and then we have the single post component that we are rendering over here. And within the components, since every post will have some comments, then we will also import the comments component over here like this, and I'll just put it like this on top before the styles. I'll import it from comments, and then the comments like this. And also we're getting the same error for not having the parent element. So yeah, let's just wrap it in the div element, and I'll just put it here, and I'll just save it. So now we have access to all the comments for each post as well. So you can see the comments component is also rendered, and this should be basically part of the post component. So yeah, we have to apply the styles to this just to make it more obvious. So you can see that it's now basically part of the single post component and not outside of it. So yeah, this is how it looks. And now we have within the comments, I want to import some comment, and I'll just do it like this. And also within here, I want to import comment from the same directory. That's basically this, and that's basically called comment, and it's basically complaining about the same parent element. So I'll just unwrap it in the div, and I'll just save it. So now we have comment over here as well. So you can see that comments component is rendered, and then for each within the comments we have the single comment component. So now I'll just add a border to the comments component as well, just to make it more cleaner. So I'll just apply styles to this. So I have comments over here, and I'll apply some border. I'll add a border of, for example, black to the comments, and I'll just import the styles over here. Styles of module, that makes sense. And also I can add it as a class name over here, styles.comments. When I save it, you can see that we have a black border around the comments component. So yeah, this is how it works. So now as you might have observed that this is how I'm importing the class name. So but usually what you do, so usually you might have seen that in HTML we are doing something like this, and we are adding classes like this, flex or whatever. So we are adding the class like that. But yeah, in here, since we are using the styles modules, then we have to import the styles dynamically like this. So it's not basically a string, but we are importing it from the file, and then we're pointing to a specific class that we created over here. So yeah, this is basically the basic architecture of our application. So now we'll have so when I load this localhost 3000 over here, then we'll have a list of the users first, and when I click the user, then it will get me to the posts of each users. It will have a list of posts, and for each post, when I click a post, then I can see the details of each post, and I'll have a list of comments for each post. So basically through this API I can create users, I can delete users, I can update users information, and also I can create posts, delete them, or update the information, and at the same I can do on the comments as well. So yeah, we'll deal with that, but yeah, I just wanted to show you guys the basic architecture or in the folder structure of our application, and how we're going to be styling it. So yeah, this is how it's going to work. Next thing that we're going to be talking about is basically the life cycle component, and we're going to be rendering our first 10 users through the API, and we're going to be using our first life cycle method. So yeah, I hope that you have learned something new in this video, and I'll see you in the next lecture.